I've been thinking a lot about this idea. How do we continue to have faith when it feels like God's not there? I remember like 2 years ago, probably, I was at the house and I needed my wife for something. And I think she was out doing one thing or another, but either I think I was missing my wallet or I needed something from the grocery store. And so I was freaking out because I really needed to get a hold of her. And I'll never forget, like, I was calling her and calling her and calling her, and she never seemed to answer or pick up the phone. And I remember just getting so much more frustrated and angry and freaking out inside. And I'm like, man, I need to talk to you. I need it right now. I need something right now. And it was like I couldn't get a hold of her. And I just remember the frustration and how terrible a feeling that was. And oftentimes, I think we carry over that perspective into our relationship with God. So there are moments where we feel isolated and alone and like, God, I need something from you right now, and you're not picking up the phone. What, are you too busy for me? Are you not paying attention to me? Do you have better things to do? And so we're freaking out internally, and it can be a faith-defining moment for many of us when we feel like God isn't answering the prayers that we have. And so before we get into this, because this is kind of a heavy topic that a lot of people struggle with, is, man, it feels like God isn't answering any of my prayers, or he isn't talking to me, or he's allowing me to continue to suffer. And why should I continue to follow him? Why should I have faith in him if there's nothing, if he's not going to be there to help support me? And so first thing I want to encourage you with is, if you're feeling this, let me tell you, you are not alone. You are in good company when you experience this. Let me talk through some of the Bible characters who felt this constantly. Like Job, that's an entire book of the Bible where one character is expressing the feeling of, God, what are you doing to me? Why is my life ending up this way? I'm in pain, I'm hurting. David constantly has to struggle with this, and he's described as a man after God's own heart. And he wrote a huge portion of the Psalms, and in those Psalms, he often expresses laments and this feeling of loss and this feeling of, God, you're not there for me. What are you doing? Psalm 10:1 actually says this: "O Lord, why do you stand so far away? Why do you hide when I am in trouble?" So a lot of us can experience that feeling. And then I think most importantly, the thing that you really need to know is Jesus actually felt this too, which is just an insane thought. When we look at one of the few things Jesus says on the cross is he looks up to God and he cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Which is an absolutely mind-blowing statement to come from Jesus. So here's the reality. Feeling like God isn't there is not something that's unique to you. Many Bible characters experience it. But as you walk through this kind of loneliness and figuring out what it means and where God is, let me give you a couple tips that will probably help you maybe get a little bit stronger or encourage you. And the first thing I want to say to you is your circumstance doesn't define your relationship. Your circumstance doesn't define your relationship with God. And so this is something that the best way I can think through it is if we think through, like, in your marriage, if you're married, something that you need to know is the honeymoon doesn't define the rest of the relationship. It's very easy to be a couple, to be happy, to be excited to be around each other when you're on your honeymoon after your wedding. It's exciting, nothing ever goes wrong, you're feeling great, all this. But the reality is that's not what defines the relationship that you have. Man, the strongest marriages aren't built on endless honeymoons. They're built on tests and oftentimes on struggle. So I think through, it's really easy to stay married when you're on a cruise in the Bahamas, but it's not necessarily so easy to stay married when you're behind on your bills. And so as you kind of navigate your relationship with God, you have to understand that a lot of times your relationship with God shouldn't be defined on all the great things he does for you, but instead on how faithful you are in moments where you feel alone. So don't let your circumstances define your relationship with God, because then you won't have a real relationship. All you'll have is someone who gives you things and so you stick around. The second thing I want to say is don't make eternal decisions based on finite situations. And so this can be, if you've ever done anything stressful in your life, you'll understand this. So if you've ever gone running, if you've ever had to finish a college paper, if you've ever had a long day, like you think through it. Like I remember one time when I was in college, I was writing a paper and I put it off and I procrastinated, and it was a 20-page paper, and I decided to write it the night before it was due. And I will never forget sitting down in my bed and just plowing through this paper, just sitting there. And my roommate goes to bed at midnight and he wakes up at 8 a.m. and I hadn't moved from the exact position I was in because I was writing this paper all night long. And I remember a lot of what it was not me planning out this big, amazing paper. It was, I just need to get through the next sentence to make it to the end. And it can feel like that when we're making these decisions, when you're struggling and feeling alone, feeling like God isn't there, man, don't make eternal decisions, because all you can do is focus on the one moment you're in. Like, it's so easy, like you're barreling your head down, you're just trying to push through, you're just trying to survive, you're just trying to make it. The reality is, man, don't allow that to define how the rest of your life goes and the rest of your relationship with God goes, because sometimes we can't see past the moment that we're living in. The disciples felt this all the time. Like, if you look at what the disciples did when Jesus died, they instantly fled in panic, even though Jesus had reassured them time and time again, hey, I'm going to come back. This won't be the end for me. I'm going to rise again. Like, there are moments when he's letting them know, but in the moment, in that fear, in that terror, all they could see was what was in front of them. Thankfully, they didn't allow themselves to make eternal decisions based on finite situations. It would have been really easy for the disciples to leave Jerusalem, to run away, to continue to never be around each other, to not associate with each other so they could be safe. But the reality is they decided, you know what, even though we're scared, we're going to be around each other. And huddled in fear, they stayed there. And luckily they were able to make decisions and choices down the road that were eternal, not finite. So don't make eternal decisions based on finite circumstances. And then the final thing I'm going to say to you, and this can be hard, is express your troubles. Be honest and open with God with what's going on in your heart. This is what we see Jesus doing when he asked God why he has forsaken him. This is what we see David doing when he's writing the Psalms. Job constantly asked and questioned and didn't know what to do. The reality is, man, you have to get to a place where you can be honest. And I love this. 1 Peter 5:7 says, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. And that can feel hard and feel difficult and feel like you're speaking into an empty room, or you're just speaking up to an empty sky. But the reality is, man, if you can't be honest with God about what's happening in your heart, he's not going to come in and begin to heal it and take care of it. Because, like we talked about a few weeks ago, when you're praying, when you're talking, it's not so much about God, but it's about us. When we pray, when we express anxieties, when we express fear, when we express loneliness, man, it allows our hearts to feel and to express and to respond and to begin to heal through these moments of pain. And so for me, I remember, when, I was so angry and I was so frustrated when my wife wasn't answering the phone, when she wasn't picking up, when she wasn't paying attention. But I remember finally, I called her and she finally answered the phone. And I'll never forget how much relief, how much peace, how much joy came over me when I finally got a hold of her. And I know as you push through, as you express these things, as you cry out to him, man, when God responds and finally answers, there's nothing else like it.